Hi guys, Tom from Video Game Music Theory here, at it again. Welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while. I've missed all y'all. As you can see, it's that time of year once again. It is Video Game Awards season, and I'm going to be happily partaking in my top 10 video game soundtracks of 2014. I did this last year on my Tumblr. I did top 10 soundtracks of 2013, and 2013 was a phenomenal year for game music. And what's amazing is 2014 might even top it. There's so many good soundtracks to look at, and I cannot wait to dive right in. So let's get right to it. I'm going to start with just some really quick honorable mentions. Hearthstone is my first honorable mention because it's a game that keeps adding more and more music for every expansion, and it's a game that really captures this character that no other game really tries to, is this kind of whimsical competitive nature, which is amazing. But I honored it last year, even though it hadn't officially released until this April. But it is, or this March, I think, is when it officially released. But it is just such a good game, and I play a ton of it on my stream and elsewhere. My second two honorable mentions are The Wolf Among Us and The Walking Dead Season 2. The reason they're honorable mentions is because I don't know what you call them as far as their release, because The Wolf Among Us technically came out in November at first, and I don't remember the cases with The Walking Dead. It might have come out just in really early this year. I don't know. And I don't get how to honor them. I honored The Wolf Among Us in my list last year, and you should definitely go check it out, because that's great music, and so is The Walking Dead. But I don't know if either of them would have even made my top 10 this year. This year's just been so stacked. My last honorable mention is going to be The Evil Within. That's a game that got some flack from the press, but I actually kind of liked it. One of the reasons I liked it is because it uses Debussy's Clair de Lune so well. The soundtrack as a whole is okay. It's not better than, Dead Space as far as horror game soundtracks goes, but Clair de Lune is so thematically important to that game, and I don't want to really spoil anything more than that, but if you're a fan of that, you should definitely play the game, and it creates this really Pavlovian reaction to Debussy. That's really the best way to describe it, I think. So let's just get right into the list. Number 10 on my list is going to be Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. Part of the reason this is always going to make any top 10 list for video game soundtracks is just because of the depth. No, sorry, not the depth, but the quantity of the material here. I'm looking at the soundtrack, and there's 440 tracks. That's so many tracks. And the other thing about it is it's just, for a Nintendo fanboy like me, it's everything you'd ever want. It's just this giant collection of remixes and just awesome songs from all your favorite characters. And it's just perfect. Like, for someone who's grown up with this stuff for as long as I have, this is everything I want. The reason why it's number 10 on the list, though, is because the amount of original music isn't as high as I'd like, and it's just not as good as Brawl's, in my opinion. I find myself going back to all of the remixes on the soundtrack from Brawl, because Brawl is probably my soundtrack of the year that year. It's just dynamite, the stuff they did on that. They got so many great composers to do remixes, and they did the same for this, but it just didn't catch me as well. The new stuff didn't catch me as well as the old stuff. So nostalgia has a lot to do with why this is on the list, of course. But anyway, it's you can't go wrong with Brawl, or with Smash 4. It's just amazing music, of course. So that's enough of that. Now we're going to go into number 9 on the list, which is South Park: The Stick of Truth. When South Park came out this year, I did not think that it would be on my top 10 at all. But as it turns out, this soundtrack, which serves to try and lampoon lots of Western RPGs like Dragon Age or The Witcher, or mainly Skyrim. Like, if I had to think of one influence that influenced this soundtrack the most, it would be Skyrim. In this attempt to lampoon these RPG cliches, and it does a lot in the writing to lampoon RPGs, of course, but the soundtrack aids in this lampooning by just being a fantastic soundtrack for any Western RPG. If you looked at the track names, you could tell that it was a South Park RPG, because there's one that's Al Gore's Secret Room. This track is Koopa Keep Kingdom theme. But if you were just listening to the music, you'd be like, oh, wow, this is We're in Skyrim, or we're in Cyrodiil. We're in the world that these kids think they are. And that's why it's amazing. And why it's just a stellar soundtrack. Alright. Moving on to number 8. We've got... This is cheating. I'm cheating. Guys, I'm cheating. I picked Faster Than Light for number 8. The reason is because, first of all these lists are subjective, so I can do whatever the hell I want. Secondly, I didn't play this game until this year. And as someone who buys a lot of games on Steam sales, and who buys a lot of games many years after they come out, you gotta cut me some slack. This technically did come out on iOS this year, so I'm actually right. And this soundtrack is just wonderful. I could listen to it for hours on end. It just creates this great character of space in this little chiptune universe that they've created. And all of the tracks are like to set up these galaxies that you go and visit, and they all are populated by certain races. Like, this is the Rockmen soundtrack, and it definitely characterizes the Rockmen as these big, burly apes, and all the tracks are like that in this game. They're very characteristic of the aliens you're dealing with, and when you get to the attack versions, it still keeps that character alive while adding intensity. And not to mention, they add a bunch of open, vast, spacey type songs as well, which I suppose the whole soundtrack is. Alright, moving on to... What did I do? I did number 7, so this is number... Oh no, this is number 7. That was number 8. This is number 7. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. This is also going to be a little bit nostalgic. David Wise is just such a good composer, though. He obviously pioneered the water theme and made water levels sound the way they do for everyone who has ever played one. I think I've talked about that. I don't know if I talked about that in a video blog or if I talked about that on my text blog, but he just does fantastic work. And again, a thing I'm going to reference a lot is this soundtrack having so much character. Particularly because it's the Tropical Freeze version, so you don't get the generic platform levels that you do in, say, like Returns has, you know, a fire level and a beach level and stuff like that. You've got, like, these kinds of levels, but they did such a good job not venturing into the cliche levels, and he brought all this character to these levels, and it's just wonderful. And I can listen to this song for days. Of course. Alright, for number 6, we're gonna do a game I actually haven't played yet, but is on my to-play list. That's Shovel Knight. The main reason it's on here is because we don't really get too much of this super chiptune kinds of soundtracks in modern games, and that's obviously what Shovel Knight's all about, is taking the retro and bringing it to 2014. You can tell from the chiptunes, you can tell from the pixel art, which is just very mimicking like a Mega Man 5 kind of style. It's definitely a game out of its time, and I mean that as the highest compliment. A lot of chiptune stuff you hear nowadays is this mix of like MIDI instruments and chiptune stuff, and they just did such a good job of taking us back in time with this soundtrack, and it's great. This is... I've been getting a lot of requests to do this, and once I get the game, which I'm waiting for it to drop on the winter sale, we're definitely going to check this out. This will be up there on my priorities in the new year to go analyze. I know you guys have liked the Mega Man stuff, so we're gonna definitely check this out soon. Moving on to number 5 is another similar kind of tune, and this is again going to be a questionable one because this is an early access game. It's an alpha. It's called Crypt of the Necrodancer, and it's by one of my favorite composers, Danny Baranowski, who wrote the music for The Binding of Isaac and Super Meat Boy and Cannibalt, which are some of my favorite indie games. And this game is all about the music because you're supposed to play it on a dance pad, which I don't have, but I love playing it on the keyboard. Regardless, it's a DDR roguelike, And that's so weird, but once you start playing it, you can play it forever. And part of the reason is because of the amazing music. It just creates this great ambiance, and like the enemies are musically themed too. The bosses, anyways. It's just a wonderful game, and the music is a big part of why, because it had better be wonderful, otherwise you're playing a DDR game with crappy music. So kudos to Dan for just making a wonderful game, and I hope you guys go check this out on Steam. I'm probably going to order a dance pad for it soon so I can sweat it out. This game is great, and the soundtrack is totally deserving of all the love it's getting. Moving on to this, number 4 should not be a surprise to anyone who's familiar with the blog. It is Mario Kart 8. This is a little bit... This is part of why these lists are subjective, because I love jazz. I'm a jazz major. And this whole soundtrack is just a bunch of jazz, and I love it! Oh man, so many good tunes. This is from Dolphin Shoals, and you'll probably see this on the blog at some point or another. It's just such a good game, and the music is part of what makes Mario Kart Mario Kart. It's what makes it different than any other Mario game, is this different, it's just this completely different vibe you get from it. And it's very important to the character of Mario Kart that we have this jazzy, extended harmonic music. And I love every second of it, man. And this is easily the best Mario Kart music of any game, because it's all live, and it's all just so energetic. Oh man, it's part of why I can play. And that's part of what's great about the DLC, is it adds even more music. Oh man, I could talk about this for hours, so I'm gonna cut myself off. And that sax solo is amazing. But now we're gonna get into the meat of things. This is the top 3 for 2014. Starting with number 3 is a game I wasn't sure I was going to even play this year. But after I found out about how great it is, and after a lot of recommendations, I picked it up. And I actually haven't even beaten the first one yet. I'm still working on that. But Bayonetta 2 gets my number 3 spot for music for 2014. And a part of why is because it appeals to my jazz side. There's so many of these... First of all, this is a jazz standard called Moon River, and I've studied this in school. And then they steal it and make this super happy, peppy remix out of it. And again, the key word is character. This soundtrack captures the character of Bayonetta so well. Just so it's like free. It's not freeform music, but you can just run freely and do what you want and take control. And that's what's important about the game, is you get to do what you want in as stylish a way as you want. And stylish is definitely a word I'd use to describe this soundtrack. And particularly because it captures all of these wide range of emotions during the game as well. There's these battle musics like this. There's epic moments scored by orchestra, very deep. I mean, they're not super, original or whatever when it comes to scoring the orchestral stuff, but it's exciting. And in the meanwhile, we've got this peppy, awesome style of music with vibes. Like, what kind of soundtrack features vibes nowadays? Ugh, I love it. But I need to beat Bayonetta 1, and I'm enjoying the crap out of that soundtrack. Not to mention, before I can really dive into Bayonetta 2, and I'm so excited to get that done. Hopefully before the year ends. Alright, now we're getting into... This is between number 2 and number 1 is where I struggled the most, I think, on this list. It's pretty easy to fill out the rest, but number 2 and number 1 is just hard. Number 2 is the Banner Saga. This game is such a cool game. It's like Fire Emblem, but serious and somehow even more fantastic. And the score, this is probably the most artful score of 2014 by a long shot. If I were to play this score, when I first heard this score, I just sat and listened to it. I dropped what I was doing and I sat and I listened. I wasn't playing the game. I was just listening to it on YouTube. This is a symphony, this score. It's a beautiful symphony with sweeping highs and dark lows, like this bassoon part here. It's just amazing. Again, the emotion and the character captured by the score. Those are the two important words when it comes to me analyzing a score. And this, I can definitely talk about it as a score, because this is so classical and amazing. Austin Wintory has the best range of anyone in the business, I think. Going from, what was the game? By the Flow, by that game company. Basically, he went from Monaco, which is just all piano, kind of hokey music, to this. That was his work. And he's working on other stuff too, of course. But the range he can capture with such a wide variety of instruments is just, it's unparalleled. I think he's the best composer in this industry, as far as that is concerned. And you just need to listen to the soundtrack from front to end and treat it like a symphonic work that it is, because it's so influenced by composers like John Sibelius, and I love every second of it. I can say that about every soundtrack on this list, though. Ugh, I can't believe I had to turn that off. But we're going to get to my #1 soundtrack of the year, and that should be no surprise to anyone who follows the blog once again. It's Transistor. And the reason why I picked this over the Banner Saga is because this soundtrack is so critical in creating the world of Transistor. If the soundtrack weren't this soundtrack, it would be a completely different game. And the music is so important to the gameplay, it's so important to the characters, it's so important to the world. And I can't imagine this game without the music. It's just so critical. It's the linchpin. The sound design in this game is just fantastic as well. From the speaker on the PS4, I didn't play on a PS4, but I heard about that, and that's amazing. To creating these characters, creating this world. Like, the sound is so important, and the music. The lead character, Red, is the singer. She sings this. This is her voice speaking to you through the music. It's so important to the narrative, it's so important to the world, and that's a big reason why Transistor is my soundtrack of 2014. That will be it for us today. I could obviously talk about these for much longer than I have, but I'm going to try to cut this video a little bit short. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Remember to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to see more. I'll update you guys with some more news about what's going to be going on in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully my plans for 2015. So, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Bye.